First, I'm being heard. And I would love if there was another SQL Saturday back in St. Louis as an FYI. So if that's on the potential, I vote yes. Okay. So I am here to talk about a Power BI and Fabric governance solution that I have worked on for the last roughly 3 years. And it seems to be helping a lot of other people across, we're going to call it the world, based on the GitHub stars. It has 123 stars right now for the main solution. And because we have an hour and a half, I'll actually go over all three of the solutions here. And they're all related. They just handle it in a slightly different way. So yeah, this is mostly about a governance solution that gives an impact analysis designed to work with any computer, any person, and across all of your Power BI or Fabric workspaces. For the agenda we'll go over today, so I'll first go over just kind of the journey that most people take with Power BI on how you first start building reports and models. Then moving on to how as you start to grow with your Power BI experience or Fabric experience, you start to move towards a golden centralized model, and how, while that is best practice, it then poses a very large problem that there's no current solution for, where if you need to make changes to that centralized model, then why existing tools fall short. And then this solution, in three different ways: a one that you can run on your computer, one that you can run in the cloud, and then another local file only version. And then just the overall features, and I'll actually go through how quick and easy it is to set all three of these up. In fact, the main point of this meeting or this demo is showing it's a one-click. It'll work on any computer, no matter how locked down the computer is, on any workspace, on any report. So with that, oh, and yes, you also get the live demo, exactly what the final output of what this does, because the main feature is it gives you visual level lineage all the way across all your workspaces. So where exactly do I visualize everything I have a model for? So with that, most people, the Power BI journey starts simple. You have a Power BI report, or you download Power BI desktop, build the report and model. It's all in one. You bring in new data, you start building the visuals, all that. You publish it to the service. Everyone starts with one model, one report, because it's all combined. You just start adding pages of different visuals. So if you make any changes to that model, there's no issue. If you rename a column, if you rename a measure, if you delete a table, all of it's handled in that same Power BI PBIX file or on the service, just in the report, because they are one and the same. There's no downstream impact. It's easy to maintain, but it's also only one file. As you grow in Power BI, best practice for Microsoft and across probably just general data practice is to have what's called a golden semantic model, a centralized model, so you can have one source of truth. So rather than have potentially different models for different reports, so if I want sales in one model and I want finance in another model, it would be better to have a centralized model, and then you have two separate reports connect to that model. It's much more scalable from a modeling standpoint, because now you have everyone using the same set of data across the organization or across your team. It's best practice by Microsoft. It's single serve, and it enables self-serve analytics where all your data is in the same place. It is perfect solution. The problem with that is as you grow, you're bound to have changes. And if you've already created the visuals or the reports that connect to that centralized model, if you change the name of a measure, every visual that uses that measure name breaks. Every single one. The entire visual will just stop working and it will say it can't find that visual or that measure. If you rename a column, every visual that uses that column will break. It doesn't matter if it's in 100 reports, one report. There is no current method for Microsoft to, when you have a centralized model with reports connected to that model, to auto update the visuals if you rename it. The visuals will just still be looking for that exact name. So they'll break. Delete a table, same thing. One small update to the model, or if it's a data flow that goes to the model, can basically break dozens of visuals across multiple workspaces. Any self-serve report that someone has made off a centralized model will break because that measure or column is no longer there. Existing tools, there is nothing that goes down to the visual level. Purview is a great governance tool for tracking your data definitions and lineage to some extent, but nothing goes to the report level. It can help you decipher what's in your model and all the way back to the source, but you can't see where do I visualize this measure, this table, this column. The Power BI Service UI, also, there's no way to see. You could download the report and see what it's referencing. And if a visual has broken, you can see what it used to be called because it'll say, I cannot find, or this is not there. But there's nothing. So as you grow, there's no way to to auto change that. But then also, so at one of my places I've worked, we had a centralized model and roughly 15 reports, all using that model. And there'd be almost probably 400 pages if I'm including hidden pages and all that, tooltips all throughout the reports across our main production application for Power BI. When we knew we were going to change a measure or a column, we had an idea where we visualized them. We had this is probably this report, but we didn't know for sure. So our best way for impact analysis was making the change in a development environment and then clicking through every single page, every tab. It was relatively quick, you could say, but it's still 300 pages. And it's easy to see when visuals are broken. It's not as easy to see, okay, the visual is broken, but I also had it as a filter on the filter pane. So then you got to open the filter pane and see if there's any X next to them. And sometimes that's even hard to see if you're trying to rapidly click through. So basically, as much as a golden one source of truth is perfect, it's only perfect if you never are going to make a change. There's always been, for years, a gap since Power BI has been and Fabric is in play. There's been a gap of being able to see where exactly do I visualize everything from our model. So about 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago now, back in March, I think of 22, I first discovered a tool called Measure Killer, which I'm sure is popular now. People have probably heard of that. It's a paid tool that, in a way, some of the features do let you see where do I visualize something. It's more about what do I use in my model and what do I not. But when I posted about that on Reddit, someone then replied about a C# script in Tabular Editor that they use, that someone who helps develop Power BI, Michael Kowalski, who also does Semantic Link Labs. If you know about Semantic Link Labs, you probably have heard of his name at least. But he created a C# script that lets you extract all the model information or all the report information in a folder, no matter how many reports are in that folder, which then got me thinking that there's also a command line interface of tabular editor, and it has just kept growing and growing and growing from there to where I first released it publicly last Thanksgiving. But I created a tool that will auto go to your workspaces, download and back up every one of your reports, your models, and your data flows, and then use the command line interface of Tabular Editor and PBI tools to extract all the report information, model information, data flow information, and then ultimately give you a Power BI report and model that lets you then explore where exactly do I visualize everything. It started just trying to solve that one issue of where do we visualize stuff, and it includes a lot more things such as your refresh history, all the lineage, your measure lineage to know if I don't rename this measure, but I change the calculation behind it, which measures are going to be affected. This also gives you complete backups, because just by the nature of needing to extract it, it downloads everything. So you have a full backup of your environment, and everything is scoped to the user level. I have tried this on so many different business computers, different companies, to make sure that it will work no matter how locked down your computer is, and it is only scoped. There's nothing admin level, both on the computer or Power BI. So the REST API and everything that it goes through Microsoft, it will only do it. You don't have to be a tenant admin. You could just be a regular developer. It just goes based on your access. If you can download this report, then it can download it and then extract the information. Since Thanksgiving, it used to be a bit of a manual step. It is now just a one click. You can actually click this right here. It's going to download a kind of like a bat file, which all that's going to do is it'll ask me, do I want to keep it? It's going to open up PowerShell, and it will first download the latest repo and I'll share this at the end, but it's a public repo that automatically downloads the latest version, and it creates a folder on your C drive called Power BI Backups. It also downloads the latest tabular editor and latest PBI tools, and will immediately pop up and ask for my username. I'm doing this live because that's how easy it is. It really is a one click. I will just choose one workspace. I recently added a workspace selector. I'll choose 3. And immediately it's going to use the REST API to get all your metadata information about your workspace, your data sets, your data set history, your report or your refresh history, your data flow lineage. It is then going to use Tabular Editor. Oh, I accidentally chose a Fabric workspace that I don't have enabled right now. It will use Tabular Editor to back up all your models that you have access to. It will then download all the reports, and then this is all command line. So it's not opening it's opening those programs in the background or whatever command line does. I couldn't even tell you enough. I just know it works. So it works on every type of workspace. If it's a premium capacity or Fabric or premium per user, it will use the XMLA endpoint to back up your models. If not, it will download the report as a PBIX and then use PBI tools to extract the model from the PBIX file. It then is going to go through and it's going to process every single model for all of the metadata from there, every measure, every relationship, every table. I'm showing this just for the fanciness of it, but then when it's done, it auto opens up Power BI Desktop and immediately refreshes. And as where it goes to, oh my God, I'm only 19 minutes in. Right away, it created a Power BI backups folder. It put all the metadata in 4 Excel files: Power BI environment detail, report detail, model detail, data flow detail. All your backups are dated, report backups, 12/9/25. And it has the metadata extracted through tabular editor, but here's all your backups. It puts the workspace, because you could have reports that are named the same. It puts it, this was the workspaces I chose: production reports only, PBIR workspace, and I guess only those two. It has, yes.
Are you okay with?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I got a lot of time.
This might. I have a odd scenario where we're just leaving the Power BI report server. Just curious.
I would love to talk to you about that.
Those downloaded PBIX files. I know there's, I haven't had to really test it. Is there a way to get those to open our BI report server without it throwing up the error like, hey, like this was me?
I'm not entirely sure. However, well, related to this governance thing, there's going to be a third option that I think this will work for regardless. But let's chat after, because the Power BI report server is the one scenario I haven't really dove into for testing, at least for this. Yep.
Yeah, the only reason I bring up one of my bosses, like, he's seen a lot of the recent Azure outages, network outages.
Yeah.
Get RS as a sort of like a 4-man's HA.
That's fair. Yep. Yeah, let's chat after. Model backups, same thing. Puts both the individual metadata and it puts it into a BIM file or TMDL. Right now I have it defaulted to BIM. It could be either. And then the data flow backups. But what really, so the backups are called a feature, which is a feature. You might want to archive all your data flows, your models and reports. But really that's needed in this version of it to get the metadata to then ultimately give you the output that it gives, which is first going to break down every single, how many objects you have across your entire environment, or in this case, the workspaces that I chose. The biggest feature is in this impact analysis. This is what started me to create this in the first place, is to know exactly where I visualize something. So if I wanted to know accommodation cost, that's a bad example. Let's go one that's more actives. Okay. If I was going to rename the object actives, which is a measure, I know that I'm immediately going to, it's affecting 2 pages, 4 visuals, and 4 visual filters. And then on top of that, a more recent feature, after SQL Saturday, actually, someone I had met, she runs a Data Witches website. She had long ago made something that lets you hover over and see exactly where it's visualized on your page. And that is now a feature. But it will also give you the link to show you, you can come right to it. So if you wanted to see, yes, I understand. It's these 2 visuals that are going, or I'm sorry, these 2 visuals. Then I can see actives right there. But it will break down and give you the direct links to every page and give you a ability to see what is impacted by that object. You can go further into a further breakdown is to understand what exactly every measure that is part of your model and how many are affected by it. So if I were to change this percentage of female trap, these are all made up reports or example reports online. This is relying on these 2 measures. That's why it has dependent measures and parent measures. Basically, it breaks down your entire measure lineage and calculated column lineage if calculated columns are part of it. This has 26 pages. I will quickly go through them because as much as the extraction of the metadata is great, this putting it all together is like the more powerful piece of it, where all three versions that I will demonstrate today are going to do the same thing. Because, and I will demonstrate version number 2 right now, in that let's say you don't, you're working on a model locally, you don't have it in the service, or if you're a consultant, you might not get access to workspaces. I have a secondary version. I'm gonna move these to the desktop, and I'm gonna come out, and we're gonna go back to my repo, and I will show you the local version. And because I have the time, I might as well run them. Favorites, or no, GitHub, there it is. So in my main repo, this is the one that I just showed, the one-click version. If I have a link to the local version, where again, it offers a one-click, and I will show that. Open. The one difference of this, again, it's going to download the latest repo and the latest tabular editor and PBI tools. It will pause here because you actually need to put the PBIX files into a folder, which I will do. I will go back to, it just created that C Power BI backups. And it can, I have them all named differently, so that way I can have them both at the same time, but it created a new folder called Local Reports and Models. Place files here. I paste them. That's the ones that I just downloaded. I click enter. It will do the exact same thing. Except because this is a local version, it doesn't have an environment piece. So the model it auto refreshes doesn't have the your refresh history, and I haven't gone into that yet, but I will eventually show you the refresh history and the data flow lineage and stuff that the local version wouldn't need to have. But just like the other, it's very fast when it's local. And even when you go through the environment, as far as capacity usage, this one-click version and the local version is almost no capacity usage. And the reason is because the heavy work of the metadata extraction is all through Tabular Editor locally. You don't even need to have Tabular Editor installed. The portable version, that is part of that. But similarly, there's the local version. It only has 15 pages instead of the 26 or 21 or whatever the other one was, simply because it leaves out the environment metadata. And you can save it. It's just a template, Power BI template file. That's why it auto refreshes, because it already knows where to look for the files. But that way, rather than you going in and seeing dummy data just to hit refresh. But back to the main outputs. So beyond the measure lineage, it also gives you all the model sources. You know what, just for funsies, since I have time, I'm going to run all the workspaces on that. Then I'll go into the I'm gonna hit all workspaces, and then I will show the version that I have not yet released to the public. As you could say, I actually asked for volunteers on Reddit to help beta test this. So by the way, if you left the workspace selector unchecked or just wanted to leave it running, after 25 seconds, it goes away and just does everything, or hitting OK will automatically do everything. But I'm going to keep that in the background, because what I want to talk to you about is that Semantic Link Labs, if you haven't heard of that, is a Python library, or if I'm saying that wrong, please forgive me, a set of libraries that lets you do all of potentially what I'm doing through Fabric and a Fabric notebook. The biggest limitation it's had compared to my local version for the last 2 years is that the reports are required to be in the PBIR format, the newer structure of, so PBIR, there's a lot of misinformation out there because they just announced that starting next month, PBIR will be the default format for reports going forward. That doesn't mean, all that means is PBIR is just the style of how the report metadata is stored inside the PBIX. So instead, right now, if you save a PBIX file by default, the metadata or how the report is built is in one JSON file. It's called layout.json. Could be millions of rows, thousands of rows, whatever, but the entire report is in one file. Starting next month, the default will change in the service or through PBIX. When you hit save, it will break it out into hundreds of files. So every visual will get its own file. Every page will get its own file. The exact same report, you won't even know that it's changed, but it ultimately allows better source control, because source controlling one file is near impossible if it's millions of rows. But one of the main limitations of Semantic Link Labs is it could only extract the metadata of a report if that report was in PBIR format, which is maybe 1% of reports right now. With the change to it becoming the default as of next month, to where if you hit edit in the service and then save, it'll immediately convert it. Or if you download a PBIX and then hit save, it will by default. You can turn it off, but it requires a tenant. It will default the tenant to be on, like to by default switch it to PBIR. So what this is effectively the exact same thing, except in a Fabric notebook, it will auto. So one thing about my local version is it's not very, you could call it not very schedulable. My whole design has been my whole purpose of the design is anyone can use it, which means service principal is not something anyone can use. An Azure app registration or Fabric notebooks, not everybody can use. But that also means that this pop-up of the login with the one click, that's not as scalable or schedulable for a refresh. I've tried to make it to where it auto updates, so the next time you click it, it will pull the latest repo, because I constantly, anytime someone has an idea that I like, it would help everybody. If you have an idea to say, someone just had an idea recently about, I have the refresh history for the data flows or data models and data flows, but I don't have if it's scheduled. So I will be adding that very soon. Because that's a great idea. Wouldn't you want to know if your model is scheduled to be refreshed? Because the cool part about this is it has nothing to do with what company you work for or what your data is, because it's about the environment of Power BI. So in 90% of cases, it just works for everybody. So this version, now that PBIR is becoming the norm, will refresh or will work for everyone, and you can schedule it because it is just a Python notebook that you can schedule in a pipeline, and that it includes the template model, which you then is connected to a lakehouse from there. And I will demonstrate it again. And this is still going through before I go through all the actual tabs. So just to show, so the other two were both one click for the main one, and then the other one you just had to put the reports in a folder. For this version, it is similarly simple. I can come out to, we'll come out to Fabric testing ground. No, we're going to come out to PBIR workspace. and I'm going to download my repo. Save as, sure, desktop. Open it up, extract it. And all I'm going to do, I'm then going to go to, so I could put a new item notebook, or I could just import it since I just downloaded. It included the notebook. So I'm going to go to from this computer, upload. That's where I saved it. Governance notebook. It is already set up to create the lakehouse tables automatically. It's set up to install everything from Semantic Link Labs. The only thing it needs is a attached lakehouse. So if you already had one, you could make it, or you could choose, or you could just do new lakehouse, and I'll just call it governance. Lakehouse schemas, where click that. I've never tried without clicking that, so in my instructions, I say click that. I hit create. And then for this purpose, I will just do, it does let you, so defaults all workspaces that I have access to, or you could later change it to be a service principal and whatever that has access to. But for this one, I'll switch it to PBIR workspace. And you could run it here, or I can now schedule it in a pipeline and it will run. I have it just going at midnight at my company right now, just to test it out. And it will do the exact same thing. We can wait till it's done, but while that's waiting, this one has now refreshed with the entire set of workspaces. 10 workspaces, 24 models. It breaks down so the PB or the environment in general, and so I want to say this right. So sometimes, as a use case, and prime use case at my last place was we have all of our reports in one workspace and the model in another. We would share all the public work or our production reports through an app in workspace B. Our models sat in workspace A. But when I designed this model and report, I don't want to choose workspace B to see the reports and then filter out the models. I want to be able to see them together to see how they interact, or to see in workspace B, it's using 4 separate models in different workspaces. So this by default will show you the model data, even if the workspace is not, or this model and report is from the perspective of the report by default. So if you choose a workspace with 5 reports that connect to 4 models in different workspaces, it will show you, if you choose that workspace, it will show you all 4 models. I have a flag to say model in workspace. You can switch that to true or false or whatever the opposite is, and then it will make it only be what it truly where the model sits. But this then allows you to see them all connected. Yeah. In the background through Power Query, it's literally when I match up the model to report with the connection files, I then actually recreate the rows in the same workspace. Rather, I originally tried to do it through DAX, and it just makes sense. The refresh time is not long enough to where that matters. I'm trying to think of, is it production reports only? Yes, this is a prime example, because I purposefully put this workspace production reports only has the reports. It does not have any of these models in there until I switch, and I could switch to model in workspace flag. And if I hit true, it's going to false, sorry. No. I'm going to figure that out after, but I promise you it works. How about that? This is a demo. And to be perfectly honest, some of these I was trying to add reports and models last night for this meeting. But getting back to the overall page or what this does, The biggest feature, yes, is this, in my opinion. It's the biggest gap that nothing solves. All the other tabs I'm going to show, they are useful. This is a all-in-one governance report. That's what it's grown to. But this is the single biggest use, in my opinion, along with one other I will get to. So you have the measure lineage. If I switch out that, to where if I wanted to see level 3, and then here's the ones that, so basically if I touch net sales, it's going to, actually I'll do that. Net sales. Net sales. If I change net sales, it's going to either directly or indirectly affect. Directly is going to affect every one of these level 3 and 4s, which means net sales is in these measures. Indirectly means that net sales is used, this measure, net sales variance, is relying on another measure that uses net sales. So again, it still will be affected by it if you change that calculation or rename it. Now, renaming it because you're in the model will typically not be an issue because it will fix itself when it's in the model. But this is just so you know, not just the visual lineage side or impact the measure side. Then we have model sources. So you can say, hey, how many are using data flows? How many are using, this is all fake data. So some of these sources don't make sense, but if you did want to know how many are using this very specific SQL database or very specific Fabric Lakehouse, this will break it down for you across all your workspaces, or well, workspaces you have access to. Data flow impact analysis. So this one is another, actually, this one will show you how many of your models are using a data flow and then list them out. There's another piece later that is hard to get to, but one issue with data flows, I personally think, and I don't know for sure if this has changed since Gen 2 CI/CD, but you have to be the owner of a data flow to see the steps. This, even if you have read access, or if you have built, if you're a workspace admin, the tenant admin, you cannot go into a data flow until you take ownership, which is still to this day super weird to me. The model, you could download the model, you could download the report, you can export the data flow, but you can't open it until you take ownership. So if you don't want to open it and go into edit mode, this breaks out the Power Query steps, because that's the main reason you're trying to get into a data flow, is that even if you're a workspace admin, and if you take ownership, the credentials may not have been related to you. So it breaks that. And this helps see that's another gap that they don't have a solution for right now. But this effectively, in that backup or through Semantic Link Labs, grabs the Power Query steps so you can see it. Data flow sources, because they have their own source, is a similar thing, because there could be two sources. You're going through a data flow to a SQL server, which that is what I was eventually going to get to, where I thought it was here. Because sometimes in my last place, if you wanted to see how a table was made, I might have Power Query steps through the model, but then there's still data flow steps that also changed it. And this puts that together, not in this view. Reports page layouts. Let's say you, because of that feature from Stephanie Bruno, she kind of gave if I can do the tooltip for where the visuals are, then why can't I just see a layout wireframe of every report? This is actually just one DAX measure. I was astounded that it's that simple. It's just an SVG DAX measure that takes, because the object or visuals have a X, Y, Z coordinates, it just takes that and puts it on there. But you can look, without actually needing the data, it will show you your page, the layout. that this is hard to see. If you have bookmarks, you'll see every visual on there, hundreds of times if they did it that way. But it's still kind of a cool, in my opinion. So this page, if I am filtered, yes. So this page is your report object usage. It's what do I use the most? By itself is just, you look at it for a second, or it confirms what you thought you used the most. At the end of me going through each of these tabs, I will show you a very cool use of this information. It is also ranking them based on a weighted metric. I'll admit it, I made up the weight, but it gives you more points if you're used across works or reports or across workspaces. It's going to give that object a little more points than just it's in one report, one page. But or eventually ranks them. Most of the time, it's always going to be a column or your date fields, usually, like in any real situation. I've never even looked at it for this fake information. Unused objects. So Measure Killer is great for your used and unused. This does this as well. It will show you entire tables or the specific objects you do not use in any way. It will look across your relationships, every report, your measures, and your measures and calculated columns and calculated tables. So effectively, if you don't use an object in any report, in any measure, so it's one thing to not use it in the model where I don't use it in a relationship, but this will also check every report across everywhere to find out if I delete this column or rename it, it'll have zero effect, mainly for the deleting, if you wanted to remove it or not bring it in to save space. Report level measures. This is a newer development as well, again, from the community. I do appreciate all the ideas because it helps everybody. This will, when it's looking through your reports to find out how many times, because even if you don't have access to the model, anybody who can download a report can use Power BI Desktop to add a report-only level measure, which is very hard to govern and track. And if they don't have their own naming style, if I decide to then add to the real model buyer type name, it causes havoc in the report to see the same name twice. Where you almost have to undo the model name just to delete it from the report, unless maybe you're using PBIR and you delete it as a file. But this will break down where you visualize and then also show the DAX. And broken report objects. This will show you every place. I promise you your visual is broken or your filter is broken, because if it's not in the model and it's not a report level measure, then there is no possible way that this visual is working. So if I went to, let's go a slicer, it'll take you right there. And it's going to show you, I only clicked on one, but this is what is no different than me not like renaming something. Because if you're not that used to Power BI, this right here is exactly what happens when you rename or remove a column or measure or table, but you had a visual of it. It will look like that. It will show you probably what it used to be called when you hit see details, but it's basically not there. But this will, because it's just a simple, where is it? It's a simple, if I'm using a field that isn't in my dimension, which goes across the model, then it has to be broken. Measure lineage is the same page as the first one. I just have a dedicated page for it. Table lineage. This is the one I was talking about, where if you have a data flow and you're trying to figure out what is happening to that table, a lot of times there might be two levels of Power Query steps, where if you really wanted to know where it started, this is a bad example. This isn't a bad example. It is using the data flow, the table lineage, to show you both sets of steps. But this is great to know, where is it a SQL, like the true source, what table is it in the database? And you would need to know the data flow from that. So if you really wanted to know if your table connects to a data flow, you need the data flow steps to really know from start to finish, how is this altered or not altered from the source. And that's what puts these together. It looks at the query IDs and the table names to effectively give you both steps. And the import mode or the mode that you're using. Model refresh history. These are terrible examples because they're all like 0 seconds, but it will break down every single refresh you have. It mirrors the service. So if I think the service is it's up to like 20 refreshes over the last 60 days. So if you've only refreshed it 3 times in the last 60 days, it'll go 60 days back. But if you've refreshed it 20 times yesterday, it will only show the last 20. It's no different than if you hit show view refresh history in the service, because this is using the same REST API. But on the right side, it gives you the detail. On the left side, it says of the ones, or here's your actual success rate. And of the ones that are successful, what is your average time? Get an idea there. Same for the data flow refresh history. Different APIs, but they do the exact same thing. And now we're getting into more of the detail pages, but you can view all your DAX measures, every single one, and all about the definitions, display folder, where exactly it is across your environment, and then search in the DAX, like text search, in case you want to look for something specific. Calculated column DAX. I don't have any calculated columns in any of these examples, but a lot of models do. Then the semantic model listing. So if you were curious, okay, I know I use something, but I don't care if I use a measure in just the model. So you could go where, or how do I rephrase that? If I don't use it, like I've used this recently to be like, I want to delete something from Snowflake, which is our main source at the place I'm at now. But I don't care if it's in the model only, but I don't use it in a report. That's all I care about. This breaks down where something is used. And so I just kind of went through here and I just didn't check the one that says reports, because it unpivots or pivots in the steps like this object name, what is it? Date is which would make sense, is used in reports, in the relationships, and measures, and calculated columns. But if I just didn't if I either choose unused or the ones that don't say reports, I could delete every one of these from the model and no one would know as long as I don't visualize it. So I could delete I could delete everything that doesn't include reports in it. So that is useful versus just used, unused, because it's still used if it's used in a relationship, but if I don't visualize it, then maybe I don't need it. But technically, sure, I'm using that key for a relationship. Yeah. Or a measure. Then this is now going more into the detail side of I like less visualized and more just you can extract or look at all the information in not a what is it called? Where the text is not wrapped. So it's easier to look line by line. On to data flow, data sources, report object layer listing. There's a lot of report layer level detail. Like one thing that you could do as well in this impact analysis is to see what type of filter, but more is the filter hidden? Is the filter locked? This will help show, like for this true, there are 1,400 objects where the filter is hidden on the page. So even if someone did look at it, they're not going to see it in the filter pane as a user. As a developer, yes, not as a user. Same for a very useful one is applied filter. If you want to know where I I have it in a filter pane, but I actually have a default set for everyone because this is downloading the default reports or the whoever the developer last saved it as. This will show you where do I have filters applied as a default in any way. It won't tell, it doesn't extract them what's being chosen. I will say though that technically, if we're going real true data security and governance, Microsoft's always called out that technically the metadata, if you choose a filter in the filter pane as a default, that will be exposed in the files. That's not, has nothing to do with my governance. I'm just calling it out. Like the selection you chose. So if somehow you chose a security, no one should know that word. It will be in the metadata of your Power BI report. Let's see, what else? Oh, then I do go over all the URL links. So it's all formula because they have the same pattern for different ways of getting to links in Power BI. So if you had an app, it will give you every single report page's app. Same for if it's a report link. By default, in that impact analysis where I take you straight to it, it takes you to the report version because in my mind, you have access to that versus the app layer. Meaning, of course, you have access probably to the app layer, but if it downloaded the report, you always have access to the report layer. The general workspace report, workspace in general. More recently, I added the fabric item information. So if you have fabric specific stuff that is like SQL endpoint, Lakehouse, I have one table for it just to show you everything. And that's kind of the breakdown of that report. And it's all encompassing, in my opinion, and it keeps growing because it just helps someone else or myself if there's a new idea. This finished, by the way, this governance thing, it took, I will call this out. So this is Semantic Link Labs. It points out that, hey, this first report is not in PBIR format. So it does nothing with it. The next two it did, because I made sure they were in that. The notebook is designed so it will always create the Lakehouse tables regardless of if you have the data, because that's how I need the model to refresh. And I have what I think is a cool Power Query trick in Power BI. Not everybody has the same environment. So you might not have half the stuff in here, but I still have steps related. So if you were ever curious and want a very cool Power Query trick, for if you have the table, that's all you need because there's a way to do expected columns, actual columns, missing columns, and then you filter it. And then basically it forces the columns there. So if you ever had Power Query steps that fail because they don't have the column or you don't know if the person you send this to, this is how this model never fails refreshing for no matter what environment you have, because I make sure the columns are there. But what I did want to show was that the one difference for the Lakehouse is, since I was giving a walkthrough, was I extracted that. The semantic link Power BI model, when this opens up, it does need two inputs. I'm going to come back to that workspace where I just created that brand new Lakehouse, because when this pops up, I will wait till it opens. It will ask for the Lakehouse SQL connection and the Lakehouse name. So in your workspace where you created the workspace or the Lakehouse, you would come to this type where it says SQL Analytics Endpoint. It's always there when you create a Lakehouse, and at the bottom left, this is the easiest way. Click on it, copy. Click there, just paste it, and then the Lakehouse name, I know I called it Get Governance Lakehouse. It is case sensitive. Hit load. It will then ask me maybe to log in, unless I've done it on this computer. Well, no, it would have made a new SQL endpoint. Nope. Don't you do this to me. Oh, I didn't call it governance lakehouse. I called it governance. Let's reopen this. See, guys, failing. Silence is deafening. Almost there. I am as excited as you guys are. Governance. And oh, I spelled it wrong again, didn't I? We'll see. Nope. Okay. They say third time's a charm for this recording. I could show you how to undo that, but it's easier just to reopen it. On. Okay. Governance. Load. There was a point to this. I will get if it actually pops up. Okay, it's working now. Eventually, it will pop up the login. I was just going to say you cannot use for a lake house if you're not typically used to this. It should pop up. Okay, it's not popping. Don't do the Windows login. You would choose the Microsoft, like when it gives you the three possible login credentials. And I can force that. This is going to end up looking no different because, again, it's the same output. And I will just to force this for you. Clear permissions, done. If it pops up like this, even if you do use a Microsoft login when choosing Windows, you need to switch it to the Microsoft account for a lake house. I'm sure there's a technical explanation that I do not know. Then it will work. So as far as the timeline, so I'm sharing this publicly January when PBIR becomes the norm. Although I'm happy to share this individually to anybody who gives me their GitHub account. I've already shared it with like 11 people on Reddit. Oh, this was just the general features. See the demo. I just gave it. And if you wanted a, this takes you to the one-click local solution. And it's open source. Feel free. I like this one click only because it now I update it every week. I'll add something. It's got like 500 commits and just in the last year, and that's not including all the private commits that I had in a totally different repo that I just started over. And I am early, so I will gladly take any questions or concerns or ideas. And I hope this brings value. Say that one more time. So that is a very good question. It depends on what level. Because I had varying levels where at first it was just GitHub. I'm sorry, it was just the visual object layer. Then I tried a way of usage. Over a year to make it automated. For the longest time, it was the best I could get is you copy and paste the PowerShell script because not even on my computer could I click a PowerShell script. So I didn't just save it as PS1 because most people would say their computers won't let you run a script. But you could open PowerShell and then run it, and then everything is at the user level. So it doesn't do anything in admin, and then the command line interface. Once it used to first require tabular editor to be installed, then I realized, hey, you could do the portable version and point it to there. A lot of ChatGPT helped. A lot of ChatGPT sent me down the wrong path. But I've learned C# a lot better because of also what not to do. And a little limited for the C# stuff because Tabular Editor 2 is limited to C# like version 5, which is they're like on 12. I don't know exactly what they're on, but I'm used to Tabular Editor 3, the paid version. And I would forget and ask and like do updates in that version, and you cannot bring that to the command line piece has to be in Tabular Editor 2. Yeah. It's been fun. A lot of late nights, but I like it because it doesn't just help where I'm at, it helps every place, or it helps no matter where I go. When I first so I work at QuickBase now, which is a software as a service company, kind of Power BI for how I'm doing the Power BI reports for how the company is performing or how others use QuickBase as a software. And the first day I ran it, because as long as I have access to at least one workspace, I don't need to worry about computer being locked down. And it gave a great insight to know what am I up against? And like, for example, they have a report with 300 report level measures. Because they started Power BI in the way that I started Power BI, but in like 2018, and they started last year, and they started how you would expect if you didn't have someone that really knew Power BI, you're going to all try to create reports, and then some of them are just going to become the report, but they're totally different than they do now have a centralized model, and they did when I got there, but there's still so many reports. We just had a cleanup a month ago that deleted maybe 100 models and 300 reports, and because they were all variations of the same thing, just they were too afraid they would put it in an archive folder but never actually remove it. And I will say 500 reports, 400 models, and maybe 30 data flows took about an hour and a half through the PowerShell version. I am a little concerned about the semantic link labs because it does take it is much slower. It does hit the capacity. I don't know capacity enough to have numbers yet or what that really means from a relative standpoint to say, is that bad? Or does it just feel bad to me because I'm used to the very fast PowerShell version? But for a capacity standpoint for the PowerShell, it's nothing because you'll barely see it downloading. And that's all it does, because once it's downloaded, it runs everything locally. Granted, I backed them up. I still have that folder, but to prove my point, they've never touched. I have a September. It was September, I guess, because now that I remember the folder. I have a September archive backup. And no one has said, where is that report? Just to prove. And now, granted, we had usage related to it as well. Because this one's hard. So everything I've done about this has been universal. I am a tenant admin at this place, but if I do that, then there's a lot of people that won't be able to run it or they're going to get errors. And I know my goal is this will work for people that aren't used to this stuff. So this one click does that. Even the Fabric Semantic Link Labs, I hate that there is no one, I can't do a one click that builds the notebook and the lake house. Not yet, at least. And I will say there are no limitations to this PowerShell version. The Semantic Link Labs, it requires a Fabric workspace to have a Fabric notebook. So there's still, but there's no denying that being able to schedule it without any issue, uh, you don't have to have a service principal for that. It works just as I'm going to add a service principal, but what I just showed is exactly how I have it set up. And I just have a pipeline that scheduled it. And one key thing at the end of this notebook in Fabric, it refreshes the SQL endpoint because I've noticed that sometimes the data is refreshed, but then the model doesn't see it because the SQL endpoint had needed refreshing. So this forces that as part of it. So it's just been fun because it proved that I'm not crazy, that this will be helpful to others that use Power BI, or that this is a real problem or solution to a problem. Awesome. I posted on Reddit, especially with bigger updates, but I also don't, I feel, and LinkedIn, but I don't like to just constantly, because I feel like I'm selling. One, it's free. I think it would take away. I've been told that I could make money from this. It feels like it would just take away my passion. Or now I really, if I already don't like to post on Reddit, on LinkedIn too much because I feel like I'm selling it. Imagine if I actually was trying to, one, I doubt it's even allowed, but it just wouldn't be fun. But Julie, you were going to say something. Oh, uh, okay. So I'm gonna read from the bottom because, well, I saw it first. Have you thought about incorporating the Fabric deployment pipeline history? Uh, ye no, that's a great idea, especially because so now that the Semantic Link Labs version is, I'm about to make that usable for everyone. I want to do more of the Fabric stuff. So this is right now I've been focused on more Power BI side, but now that it's becoming all encompassing or all whatever in a holistic view, I want to be able to, whatever else you can get metadata from, I want to say why not? This doesn't take a long time. Especially the final model that puts it all together. I do think that's the biggest value. And you will notice that if you just Googled Semantic Link Labs or how to run to get the visual object layer or the model metadata, that is a much smaller notebook than what I have. Mine's very long, and the only reason is because we'll call it easy transfer. I needed Semantic Link Labs to output in this to make this as easy as possible to transfer the final model, which is the heavier part of the work to bring it all together. I needed the same columns, the same column names, the same everything. So a lot of what the notebook is really doing is sure it's looping, but it's just renaming to make sure that if Semantic Link Lab says display name without a space, but all the Excel does that, I don't want to have to retro change everything. So now they're all aligned. But that is to say, Fabric deployment pipeline history. That's a great idea because that sounds probably simple. If it's part of the REST API, it can be pulled and added here. That's what I keep adding stuff as I realize, oh, that's part of the REST API and it's not admin. If it's admin, for now, I've been trying to keep that. You can do that, and I can even help show how because I have a version that does do more admin stuff. But my ultimate goal is all universal. Refresh history, a matrix view on the visual. Okay, yeah, I do like a better way of showing the refresh history, especially in the hour of the day. Um, yeah, that is a good point. Right now, see, and I will say I'm not an expert on visuals. Uh, So I've been trying to do like the matrices for give you quick insight, but I'll take visual ideas all the way that help highlight stuff. Oh, so I said, if you recall, if I'm still sharing, am I? I just saw the chat about the deployment pipeline history on, you will contribute or help send that my way. I would love that. I wanted to bring up, where is it? I brought up that this in itself, the report object usage in itself is it I don't know what you do with it outside of knowing what you use most. But I've been playing around recently with, I started with ChatGPT, just a private chat or a custom GPT, but with Semantic Link Labs, it opens the door for what I'm about to say. But I have because this is a DAX query that weights scores, I made like a quick table of, hey, here's every page, here's every object across all our pages with that weighted score. And if you do that with maybe the model like maybe you have put a definition next to your measure or your column. But when I gave it all that in just a text output with a rank, it makes a very cool Power BI report search, like 10,000 times better than what you have today. Right now, you can only search a report. You can't really go into pages, but if I can help show this, if that's not going to be logged in right, if I can show you the ChatGPT version, it just opens the door very much because it's already in a lakehouse, to add one table of that predefined DAX table that I made for ChatGPT. And I know I'm saying a lot, but the whole point is that it gives the context to say, okay, if I'm this new employee or I want to find out about revenue, because of that ranking with definitions, it gives I'll give you the best pages where we visualize it the most often, paired with maybe it's because it ranks across every page, across everything. It'll show you the best likely place and report for your revenue or whatever you're asking. Or if you're a new employee, one second. Oh, it will be worth it. So we have ChatGPT Enterprise. That's why I tried it there first. Come on. Oh no, yeah, it's a one-time code. You're fine. Yep. Now, if you could guess that password and have my authenticator, good for you. You deserve it. But here's like an example question where I'm a new sales manager. What are the top reports I should use? And it has the entirety of every report or every object that I visualize, and will give you, because it has the page URLs in there, it gives you the exact pages to where to go. And I don't even, and that is so much better than any search that we have across Fabric and Power BI. And because it's using the ranking of your own objects, it's almost always going to give you the right answer. Like I haven't been able to get it to give it wrong with this ranked score. And it's just a table of all the report name, page name, workspace name, then the object score, and then the definition, if there is one. And then it will take you right there.
You tried this with Copilot?
Not officially yet, but now that Semantic Link Labs works, what my goal is and what I want to show other people is to auto write it to a lake house for a Fabric agent, which would be the same thing. I would think that at that point it's the same. Because I have the query, I even have it in Power Automate so I don't lose it to the exact table on what to output. And because, again, it has all the pages, the page names, every object definition, it is surprising. I know this is ChatGPT, but it's just a table from this model that all this text that it's giving for, that is not in there. It's from the context of what the measure is called, what the definition is. It describes the pages extremely well. And I'm 98% confident that the Fabric agent or Copilot will have no difference. 5gen? Yeah. Now that I probably shouldn't have clicked the link but I'll worry about that recording later. But otherwise, that's where I was like, there is a piece of the object usage that's very useful, or that has potential. And that.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah. And all it's doing is just, hey, report object count. And I have how many workspaces something's in. That's its own measure. So it takes workspace impact times 10, report times 8, page times 6, and eventually gets all the way down to the times 1, because, if just how many times it's repeated. But then that's how I weighted it. And it seems to work well. Yes, I actually even submitted to speak on it, which would force me to quickly get a demo. But now that was before I even had the Semantic Link Labs piece. Now I'll admit the Semantic Link Labs piece, 95% of this work of converting it was just through ChatGPT or GitHub's Copilot agent. It has astounded me. Like, compared to ChatGPT, you copy and paste, but I might not know where to paste it. The GitHub Copilot agent has just updated the repo for me exactly where it's supposed to go. And my main instruction was, hey, look at Semantic Link Labs repo. It's public. Now look at my C# scripts, public. I need the same output with the same names in using this. And I mean, it wasn't a lot of questions and it got us there. And then it was me just updating the model to now use the Lakehouse connection with very small differences. So that's all I got. Yeah. I appreciate it. It's been a very fun, passionate project that I love, that I'm not crazy that it is a problem this helps solve. And I'll admit I'm relieved that I knew about Semantic Link Labs 2 years ago or a year ago. And I'm like, this is going to replace but it doesn't. Semantic Link Labs by itself gives that information. It is the model that brings it all together. I mean, someone else could create a better one, but that alone has taken so much time to figure out all the scenarios of, hey, what if you don't, because this will cover, let's say I don't have a model. This will okay, like for this example, do I have an example? Let's say you are analysis services where you can't download a model. Right here, this partial model HR resources. This is a model that wasn't available or couldn't get. Let's say you don't have access to that workspace. What it does is it looks at the report and at least takes what's from the report and puts it in the model detail. All through Power Query, but basically says, okay, well then give me every column you use, every report, or every measure you use. I may not get all the information from it, but at least I know there's a minimum of 9 tables and 11 columns, because I use that in the report. So I've had a lot of people from the community where they gave a scenario where it didn't work, where I didn't even think about that scenario. The analysis services, that's where it creates a model and it says partial model to help highlight, I didn't have this model, so I'll only take what's from the report and give you the best information I got. So it's only gotten better from everybody else, and it's cool because it works, or it's everybody's environment is the same. It's all just the tool itself, you know. So I appreciate it.
Curiosity,